Okay. Good evening. Welcome to the May 24th, 2021 meeting of the Marshfield Planning Board. It's now 7:02 p.m. Tonight's meeting is being recorded by MCTV, and we are holding a live remote meeting via Zoom. Tonight, the members here are Katie O'Donnell, Nick Papastratis, Fred Monaco. I don't see Kevin, and I'm Mike Viviano, the chair. Absent tonight is Peg Davis and Kevin Cantwell. Also with us tonight is Greg Guimond, our town planner, and Karen Horn, our assistant town planner. At this time, I'll make a motion to open the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second, Katie O'Donnell. Aye, Katie O'Donnell.
Nick?
Nick Papastratis, aye.
Fred?
Fred Monaco, aye.
And Mike Viviano, aye. So tonight's hearing is open.
Terry, I've made you a co-host so you can say, show things. Mike, Fred Monaco has his hand up.
All right, somebody's still echoing. Everyone mute if you're not talking. Did that work? Okay. So somebody has two things going. It sounds like a phone and then something else. At this time, I'll make a motion that we open the public hearing for the Resource Way Division definitive subdivision. Is there a second?
They all
Second, Katie
muted
O'Donnell.
themselves.
Aye, Katie O'Donnell.
Nick?
Nick Papastratis, aye.
Fred?
Fred, you have to unmute yourself. Lower left corner, bottom.
Fred Monaco, aye.
And Mike Viviano, aye. Terry, this is you?
Yes, it is.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I guess I'm going to ask a procedural question first, since neither Kevin nor Peg are here. Will they get to mullinize this first hearing as we go forward? Because I'm assuming we're not going to close tonight.
If they so choose, so that they,
Here comes Kevin now.
Well, that may make that moot. There's Kevin.
Technical difficulties getting in.
Hi, Kevin.
Hi, Greg. How you doing?
All right, we've opened the public hearing. Terry was about to start on the Resource Way subdivision.
And you didn't miss anything. Okay, Greg, I'm going to mostly work off of, once I get to pull up the screen here, give me a second to do so. And then if you've made me a co-host,
Yep, I did.
okay. I'm going to mostly work off of the sheet 7 and 8 of the subdivision set. So hopefully everybody can see a plan up here. And then I can do a walkthrough from that. Because to go through all 12 sheets, we'd be here quite late. All right, so what we're in front of the planning board for is an extension of the Enterprise Drive roadway for the purpose of accessing parcel D10-0207E, which is the land of Tim Connor, lying just to the west of Enterprise Drive and Enterprise Park. And historically, Greg and maybe Michael are the only two that would remember back when the original Enterprise Park subdivision was approved back in 2003. One of the caveats in that subdivision, one of the conditions, was that along the northerly part of the existing drainage basin parcel, or just beside Kerwin Surgical's parcel, I'm kind of moving my cursor back and forth in that area, we had been required to extend a roadway reservation on paper only for the purpose of accessing Tim Connor's land. And Greg and I actually had a kind of a passing chuckle about the fact that it was originally part of being in keeping with the town's master plan of the 1990s to run away parallel to Route 139 and take some of the traffic off of it long before all the widenings occurred. But that was the intent, was to allow that roadway reservation into Tim Connor's land and to be extended through. And so that remained in that location for 13 odd years, would have required filling part of the detention basin and grading in. I'll stop for a second because I see Peg jumping on as well. So I'll let you admit, Greg, before I keep going.
I believe I got her. Let's make sure she gets in.
Okay.
Peg, can you hear us? Peg, can you hear us?
I can.
Okay. We've just started the Resource Way public hearing on subdivision.
Okay.
All right, Terry.
Okay. So anyway, that roadway reservation would have required filling part of the detention basin and presumably replicating the volume elsewhere on the parcel. That would not be allowed under the current conservation regulations. In 2016, in conjunction with the sale of the Kerwin Surgical property or the purchase of the additional property, Associated Engineers had shown on paper a relocation of that reservation kind of looping through a good portion of the basin and extending over actually to time at that time to land that was briefly under control of Tim Connor, that had been part of a parcel swap that was then swapped back to VRT. Likewise, that would have required filling a good portion of the basin in order to construct that roadway. And in 2018, VRT wished to develop the portion of that parcel lying to the southwesternmost area adjacent to the state highway and put the electronic messaging board in a small building that they could work out of in order to monitor the office park itself if need be. And through ZBA and through conservation, a site plan was permitted to basically undertake that work. And at that time, it was discussed, my initial discussion was with Greg about the existing roadway reservation. It looped through the detention basin, and what we kind of jointly discussed was a means of providing that roadway reservation that could realistically be constructed for the purpose of accessing the end of that parcel and not have to fill in part of the detention basin and not have to deal with the wetlands, the bordering vegetated wetland that it was now delineated as. So at the time, we basically designed a right-of-way in and showed a roadway reservation coming perpendicular to that. We showed our initial work as a driveway with a dashed line around it, showing it would be a future roadway reservation, and then showing a T intersection in that reservation extending over to the land of Tim Connor. Subsequent to that, Mr. Connor has sold off a couple of pieces of his property to Frasco Landscaping, to WATD, and now a 10-acre portion of this site located as the very southwest corner of the property, Resource Way LLC, aka the McDougall Brothers Construction, would like to purchase this parcel and have it under agreement in order to eventually move their contractor yard to this location and take it out of a residential setting just down the street from our office on Webster Street, just past Parsonage in the old Jack Flag site. So what we have proposed is to basically bring a paved roadway off of the end of Enterprise Drive at the location of the cul-de-sac, neither terminate nor remove the cul-de-sac because the gas station, the gas company still maintains frontage there, as does the adjacent parcel. Although the gas company theoretically would pick up frontage along our extension. But their main access and a lot of the pipelines, et cetera, go through the cul-de-sac. To bring that roadway down to the location of where the building is now and where the messaging board is going to be, and make a T intersection, and then provide a new paved roadway, which will be Resource Way, over to land of Tim Connor, so that that roadway reservation envisioned back in 2003 is in fact fully constructed over to that parcel, so that McDougall Brothers can eventually use it to create their new home for their company going forward. So the existing conditions of the parcel are such that we have the existing detention basin at the end of Enterprise Drive, which has been there since the 1980s. I'm going to zoom in on this a little bit. And that basin has remained undisturbed since that time. There's been some minor work, obviously, with the construction of Commerce Way. An additional pipeline was brought into it, but the remainder of the basin has stayed the same roughly for the past 20 years. Since that time, that driveway has been constructed. Actually, the only thing that hasn't happened is the pavement hasn't gone down in anticipation of having to place a water line in that driveway when it becomes a roadway. But the existing forebay and small detention basin located kind of here at the elbow of the driveway and what would be the new roadway going in have been constructed. They're stable, they have grass growing in them, and they were designed in such a way as to take the drainage from that upper portion of the proposed roadway, and we've treated it as a paved surface all along, knowing that eventually it would be paved. And again, not yet because of the remaining utility installation. This roadway, Enterprise Drive extension, will access at a 2% grade off of Enterprise Drive from the cul-de-sac. We'll have a leveling area as we come in off of Enterprise Drive, and it will tip down at a 2% grade, translate down to a -4% grade in the middle, and then with a low point where this intersection is going to be, and then transition. And actually, I'm just going to flip, make sure I'm sharing, and then I'm on the profile sheet so that I have this correctly. And we'll transition to the remaining roadway going in Resource Way, which will go in to the adjacent Connor parcel, coming off at a -1% to a 5% grade in the middle, and then leveling out with our low point being in the area of this T turnaround, leveling to a 1%, then to a +1%, because overall the site is fairly level. There's not a tremendous amount of grade change in this area. Most of the existing site, the bottom of the existing detention basin is basically around elevation 70, and most of the surrounding grade, I mean, we're up at the 80s up in the area of the part of the wall, the roadway up here, but most of this existing area is in the range of elevation 72 to roughly 80. The roadway, as we're proposing it, will have 22 feet of pavement with Cape Cod berm on either side. We're doing this for two reasons. And this is one of our waiver requests, as shown both in plan view and in our cross section, which I'll slide over to in a minute. The first is to try to keep the amount of disturbed area as small as possible on the site. even though the existing detention basin is in fact a drainage basin and has been such, it does have the characteristics of being a bordering vegetated wetland. There's wetland vegetation in it. And Conservation Commission has deemed that, in fact, it is a wetland. And in working with them and maintaining the required setback distances, some of which they gave us a variance to, in order to bring this roadway in at the point that would require no disturbance of the basin, we've agreed to try to keep that disturbed area as small as possible. This proposed roadway, which is intended to remain private and not be accepted by the town, but will be maintained by the McDougals and by VRT, is only going to service this one lot or this one parcel. We will have a drainage lot on it, which will be solely for drainage purposes, but it will service one lot and is not intended to loop through or connect to any other adjacent parcels. In keeping a narrower width of roadway, we're disturbing a lot less vegetated area of the site, wooded area of the site. And our cross section basically shows it. What we would then do, I'll have to flip over to one more page to do that, but would show a guardrail on either side of the roadway, just in a portion of the area where we're descending at that 5% grade, and we have some 3-to-1 slopes on either side. And where we have a culvert that we're proposing at the near the low point, just beyond the property line, in order to culvert and direct any overflow runoff from the drainage basin and continue it downstream in the same location that it is now. We're actually showing a trap rock channel below that. And this has been the source of a little bit of discussion with conservation, because right now the overflow that comes out of there isn't a tremendous amount of scour. If you go out there after even a fairly heavy rainfall, I was out there in, I want to say it was March, when we had a really heavy Saturday rain, and I went out there the following Monday and took a walk around, and basically what you saw was a lot of leaf and pine needle debris kind of pushed around and kind of arcing back and forth and just kind of mushed all over the place, following kind of a scattered back and forth path through the low area. No real scour, a little bit of sand, a little bit of sediment, but no per se erosion or gullies in that area. And that's because of the fact that there is a little bit of an energy dissipator coming out of that existing spillway. But it certainly, as time goes by and a little bit more development takes place and a little bit greater volumes come into that existing detention basin, eventually there'll be a little bit more water overtopping that area. And so what we've proposed to kind of head off any future issues is to place a 6-foot wide trap rock swale, if you will, kind of a channel below our below our proposed culvert, and carry it down to about 75 feet off the wetland line. Rod Procaccino, and I had mentioned maybe building an energy dissipator into the bottom end of that, which we can certainly do. We have an energy dissipator kind of coming out of our small detention basin, which will take our runoff from the new roadway. That drainage system, existing separate from the already constructed 4-bay and detention basin up by the larger basin, will sit at the location of the cul-de-sac or T turnaround, if you will. And that has been sized to take the drainage from that portion of the roadway. That will actually discharge downstream of our culvert, well downstream of the detention basin, in an area that puts it roughly 50 feet off the wetland. That is under discussion with conservation at the moment. They did seem to have a little bit of concern with that regarding the proximity to the wetland. However, it's not prohibited, so I'm in the process of circling back with them because we are keeping all of our site disturbance outside of 50 foot.
Mhm.
Under their old regulations, we're allowed to bring stormwater right up to, literally right up to the edge of the wetland. Utilities that we're proposing are pretty standard. We're going to bring an 8-inch water main in off the 10-inch, bring it into the site. Rod suggested moving our hydrant out a little bit further. We showed it pretty much at the property line between the two parcels. But as there is a hydrant right immediately adjacent on the gas company site, that can be accessed in an emergency. He requested that we pushed it out. The cul-de-sac itself, again, for the purpose of trying to keep our paved area down, we're proposing it as a T turnaround, as this will be developed with a contractor yard and a little bit of will also be a building. So we're hoping what we'll do is eventually have a small loop through this that we can access the building and then access other parts of the contractor yard as that site plan is fully developed, which will occur once Resource Way has obtained all their permits for the site. They can't really, we have a vision of what we want to do out there, but we can't make it reality until we have all our obtainable permits and the transaction can take place. So there will be a future site plan involved that will meet all of the stormwater management and the conservation regulation requirements. With that, what I'd like to do, unless Greg, you want to do it, I'll briefly capsulize the waiver requests. And then I can take comments at that point. I don't see a need to go into a lot of the construction details. Both Pat and Rod have reviewed it. Pat can report on his comments. I received Rod's additional comments Friday afternoon, and they're pretty much in line with Pat's. Some small plan changes and some technical items that we'll add to the plans. So I'll kind of toss it back to you for a minute, Greg.
Greg, you're muted.
Yeah, I muted myself. I was going to say, go ahead with the waiver request, Terry, unless you need a break.
Nope. I'll do a walkthrough of the waiver requests, and I'm gonna kind of skip the obvious ones, like even though we put them on the plan and in the letter, like the fire control box, call box.
Yep. Street lighting. So Terry, street lighting, fire control box,
Yeah,
the park, and the Cape Cod berm. Go ahead, skip all those.
yeah, those are pretty much a formality. Our waivers that we've requested are geometric or construction waivers. And the basis for requesting those waivers is the fact that they're taking place at the beginning of this proposed roadway in an area where we're constrained by that detention basin and by the amount of disturbance that we can create. I do have a couple of comparisons to illustrate, though. We've asked for waivers regarding width, alignment, and grades of streets. And in my letter, I tried to kind of break it out into a little table, if you will, to make it easier as to what was required and what was proposed. We do meet the right-of-way width. We do have a 50-foot width, although we're throughout the regular portion of the right-of-way. We're showing as we connect from a property line perspective, as we connect to Enterprise Drive, we're obviously not touching the gas company property line, and we're making kind of a sweep in that area, so that will be an irregular shape. But again, that's the kind of the geometry that the site dictates to us, and we bring it in so that it meets an angle at the property line corner, so that we can bring that roadway in at a shallower angle. minimum center line radii for the roadway coming in. We're asking for a waiver to reduce it from 200 feet to 120 feet. My comparison for that is at the beginning of your roadway back up in the area where you first come in, up by Crown Automotive and Eversource, where you have that sweeping S-turn. Both of those roadway center lines are respectively, I believe, 165 and about 140 feet as you make it around that S-turn. And that's carrying all of the traffic from Enterprise Park as well as the connection through, because we're a looped roadway system up over Commerce Way. So you do have a kind of a shallower curve, if you will, that seems to be adequately handling the traffic for everybody. Granted, you have wider pavement. Here we're requesting this based on the fact that we do have that site constraint of the detention basin, and we're only servicing one lot. We're servicing this one property that's going to be for one sole purpose. So that's the reason or the basis for that, that request. Our centerline grade is compliant. Our design speed is compliant. Our curve radiuses are compliant. So I basically gave a table where it says on our letter, where it says C, that we're compliant, where it's W, that's where we're requesting the roadway, or requesting a waiver. And our other geometric waiver, if you will, is the minimum length of tangents between reverse curves. We did that mainly because we're coming in off of Enterprise Drive. There's no real curve per se, but we are providing a 50-foot straight section as we connect. Part of that cul-de-sac will be opened up so that, again, that shallow curve can be maintained. Coming in, we'll have a straight section and then go into our curve parallel to the tight corner at the gas company, where we'll come down and then have a compliant T intersection. So having that,
Terry?
yep.
Right at the point of the entrance on the right side.
Over in here, okay?
Yep, down in there. Is it possible to put up a warning sign, road narrows?
Yes, yep, absolutely. Yeah, and in fact, based on one of Rod's comments, and I think Pat's as well, about the proximity of the Cape Cod berm to the pinch point at the gas company.
Yep.
Actually, I walked it with Mike when we were doing our test pits out there 2 weeks ago. And we kind of looked at that and said, yeah, we can push that pavement a little bit and the guardrail a little bit closer to the retaining wall. On a 40 scale, it doesn't show up nearly as well. But what it'll do is it'll serve to push the tangent section over a little bit. And with that, what I looked at doing was potentially just flattening this section just a tiny bit so that you do come in at a little bit shallower approach in here, which will take a little bit of the onus off of that as well by pushing that pinch point out just a little bit. But nonetheless, it would be a waiver because we'd be coming off of Enterprise and having less than 100-foot tangent section between the two. We could also put a speed limit sign up on it as well. But yeah, road narrows is absolutely appropriate. The other, and obviously with that and with the geometric construction waivers, we'd be asking along with that the waiver for way lines being parallel and concentric, again, because we're coming off the existing cul-de-sac. Once you reach the point where that line can sync up with the gas company property line, then your cross section is, or at least your roadway lines are parallel and concentric. And the new portion, it would push over into Resource Way is a concentric layout. Everything is right down the middle there. Our center line runs the same. The other two waivers that would be considered discussion worthy would be obviously length of dead end street. We're requesting a length of dead end street of just a little bit over 704 feet, where 600 is the maximum. That's through the back end of the cul-de-sac, and it's so that we can place this T turnaround in the location that it's shown. Rather than try to pull this back and place a cul-de-sac overlapping both properties, and also place the cul-de-sac at a location where it would fall over the existing drainage channel that's been in place since the 1980s. To make it work physically, to maintain the existing drainage characteristics of the site, and to allow that overflow to continue in the same location it's always been, and not try to create more disturbance by having to move it. We're requesting that 100-foot, slightly over 100-foot waiver to leave that in its existing location. That physically makes the most sense, and it makes the most sense for the remainder of Enterprise Drive going back upstream. The other waiver that we've requested is sidewalks. However, what the McDougals are proposing is to go back up, because this will be accessing their contractor yard. They obviously are not going to be doing a lot of walking up and down in that area. However, what they have offered is to go up and reconstruct a good portion of the existing sidewalk along Enterprise Drive, going up from Commerce way up towards Plain Street, in an area where people from Modera are utilizing that in order to get out to 139, whether they go across to the Ming, or they just take and walk that area and circle around through that area. To me, that would have greater public benefit than constructing sidewalks in this location. And they're willing to undertake that sidewalk improvement up Enterprise Drive in an area that it'll be utilized. So they're offering that in place of constructing sidewalks in the portion of the roadway that they're going to utilize.
So Terry, on the Enterprise sidewalk, a small portion of it Modera did redo. Do you know how much that was?
Off the top of my head, I don't, and I keep driving by there and trying to.
Couple of 100 feet, because what I'm looking
Yeah.
at on the board side is I would tie the sidewalk in also to the length of dead end waiver. I'm showing about 2,200 linear feet of sidewalk minus the piece that Modera has already fixed on Enterprise Drive as what they would be upgrading versus the 704-foot road. So I would think that is a public benefit. It does tie in the Modera population with the two facilities that are going in. One's already there, the brewery, and the second facility will be opening in a little while. And then you have businesses at the end, and it brings you over to Ming Dynasty and the restaurants and the McDonald's and the Wendy's and stuff. So I like the idea of the work on Enterprise Drive.
Okay, I think that sums up my presentation, so that I don't drag things out, and I'm open to questions from the board. Thank you.
Greg, do you have anything else to add?
On the waiver request, the one thing I mentioned to their attorney right before the meeting started, I've sent an email to Tom Reynolds with the suggestion on the landscape plan, since they weren't planning on putting any street trees or anything down on their extension, to fund or provide the tree warden with the funds for 6 new street trees that could be used elsewhere in town.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
And with that, I think on the waiver side, I'm fine with the waivers. I mean, it is a difficult site because of the wetlands. It's not the most, it's a unique entrance and curve in and stuff, but I think they've done the best they can to connect to that back piece of land. Terry, is there any way that the forebay could be moved, or are you guys going to address it through the easements? That was one of Rod's comments.
Yeah, we could do that. What I need to do, to be perfectly honest, is I need to circle back with conservation and get some clarity from them, because if they want me to pull out of the 75 or the 100 foot, which they've suggested, then what I may likely do is just lengthen that basin out. We could show the easement for it. We did put the basin in a drainage lot. So the shape of that might change a little bit. But either way, we could either provide the easement for that. That to me is just a document that's drafted and something that we could add to the plan as an easement line. Also, we discussed briefly just showing an easement over the corner of the existing drainage lot adjacent to the detention basin,
Okay.
for the forebay and existing detention basin that were already there. I think that was the thing Rod was also concerned about. We're showing that as having an easement as well. That would just be a straight line from the angle point. You know, we'd be basically drawing a straight line from this angle point out to perpendicular to the new roadway and just calling this a drainage easement, or maybe even just creating its own drainage lot for that purpose and folding both of those into it.
Okay. And Mike, also the DPW is okay with the hammerhead versus the cul-de-sac. They're okay with the 12-inch Cape Cod berm. Terry, the one thing that they were looking for is the design information or as-built plans for the existing retaining wall on that opening, that beginning section.
Yeah, and Mike McDougall will furnish those.
Okay. I'm all set, Mike. Pat is here, I believe.
Okay, Pat, do you have any other comments to add or concerns?
Not really. I submitted a letter to the board on May 6th with a number of comments. Most of them are editorial in nature. The only two that I would bring up would be the width of the Cape Cod berm. They were showing, they're showing 12 inches and 18 inches in another location. Your rules and regs call for 18-inch, but it's been my experience that there's only one paving company that actually has the equipment for an 18-inch Cape Cod berm. And so we've been going with 12-inch and then typically making the road, you know, another 6 inches wider in those situations where it calls for an 18-inch. And then my other comment, and I believe Terry just mentioned that they did the additional soil testing a couple of weeks ago. So that was the only other comment. You know, the other comments in my letter, I think are fairly, I've discussed them with Terry, so I know that he's working on addressing them, and I think they're fairly easy for him to address.
Okay, thank you, Pat. Any questions or comments from anyone on the board right now?
I would just reiterate, I know that in past subdivisions, but that I think that this looks pretty good. And the extended roadway, you know, where it's only accessing one lot, and that's been very explicit that it will only be for this one lot, that doesn't bother me. And also the, you know, reduced width of the roadway, but because they have the full right of way and could technically do that, but in order to reduce disruption to the site, I like the sound of that too, but I just thought I'd reiterate to clarify, since I've felt differently in other subdivisions.
Okay, thank you. I agree with you on those. Those are good points. Anyone else from the board before I go to the public? Okay, seeing none, is there anyone from the public that'd like to make a comment or ask a question? Okay, I don't see anyone from the public. So we have a couple of issues still to change in the plan through Pat's comments. Greg and Terry, that's where we're at right now?
Yes.
So I have a question for Terry. Terry, you got maybe 4 or 5 things, small things DPW was looking for, and a few things from Pat to correct the plans.
Yes.
Is this something that you feel you can get done fairly quickly, or, because I'm looking at is, do we write a decision with a bunch of fix this, or would you be able to get to me, Pat and Rod, so we could write a decision without having do this, and do this?
Yeah. The honest answer is most of the requested changes have been made. We're actually on back in front of Conservation next Tuesday, I believe. So what I'm hoping to do, I obviously won't get plan changes into them to meet their deadline. And I don't like to ping pong back and forth. So what I'd like is in my next go round with Conservation. When are you guys back on? In 2 weeks or 4?
So we're in 3 weeks.
3
We're
weeks.
on the 14th of June, which is becoming very full.
Okay, that's okay. What's your next scheduled hearing after that?
28th of June is the next one after that.
All right, so that's just about 4 weeks out. I think given the unease that conservation, or the questions that Conservation has posed, I won't say unease, they've posed some questions, but they've kind of left them open-ended. I want to circle through them. From my perspective, everything I need to do to clean up the technical details could be done for your next hearing. But I want to get on a more solid footing with Conservation. And that way everybody's lines up on the same page.
That makes sense.
And Terry, I agree. Instead of coming back around and have to make changes, let's hold off. We have a question, Mike. It's from Capeway Eye Care, 709 Plain Street. Where is our building in relation to this? This is at the very end of Enterprise Drive to the southwest of the gas company facility. Terry, is there anything else you want to add to that answer?
Nothing other than there's no access planned off of Plain Street and no access through Plain Street.
Well, other than Enterprise Drive.
Yeah, other than Enterprise Drive, there's no new access. No.
I believe Capeway's in the beginning, right? And then you're on at the end.
Yeah, our property line that will be created out of this subdivision will actually run parallel to the edge of the electric power line easement. So the remaining land from there, or about from WATD all the way back up to Plain Street, is going to remain Tim Connor's land.
I think they may be more interested in the next public hearing, which is the Ace Hardware VRT proposal up Plain Street.
Okay, any other questions from the public at all? Seeing none. Greg, we're looking to extend this to the 28th.
Yeah, we'll continue the public hearing to the 28th. I'll try, I'm going to try to get a draft decision, so at least you have something to work off that night. If things get tied up, or with Concom, we can always hold off on the draft decision. But if things go smoothly, hopefully with Conservation Commission, we could wrap it up on that.
That will give me the 1st and the 15th to settle things out with Conservation, and then, like I said, I want everything to kind of line up on the same page.
Okay, that's fine. So I'm going to make a motion that we continue this public hearing until June 28th, 21 at 7:05. Is there a second?
Second, Katie O'Donnell. Aye, Katie O'Donnell.
Nick?
Nick Papastratus, aye.
Fred?
Fred Monaco, aye.
Kevin?
Kevin Cantwell, aye.
Mike Viviano, aye. And Peg?
Peg Davis, aye.
Okay. Thank you. That's continued to the 28th.
Thank you, everybody,
Okay, thanks, Terry.
very much.
Good presentation, Terry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Gotta remember to stop share and give Greg the screen back. I went away one time and left my screen up and conservation was not happy with me. Good night, everybody. Thank
Night.
you.
Aye.
Thanks.
All right, so at this time, I'm going to make a motion that we open up the special permit public hearing for Ace Hardware and the PMUD WRPD. Is there a second?
Second, Katie O'Donnell, aye. Katie O'Donnell.
Nick,
Nick Papastratus, aye.
Fred,
Fred Monaco, aye.
Kevin,
Kevin Cantwell, aye.
Peg,
Peg Davis, aye.
and Mike Viviano, aye. So that hearing is currently open. Is there someone here to present it?
Yes, my name is Gabriel Padilla. I am with Grady Consulting. I am in representation of Ace Hardware. We did receive the review by Mr. Brennan, and we also received the WRPD notes. We got those last week, so we still have some open-ended things, but I would like to have an opportunity to at least present the project. And if anyone has any questions, any comments, we can address everything at once.
Sure, that'd be great.
I've made
Perfect.
you a co-host, so if you want to show the plans, go ahead.
Perfect. I would actually need to be co-host on the user called G Padilla, which is the computer.
All right. Get rid of the chat so I can find you. Make a host. Yes. Okay.
Okay. Okay, so
And right
this
from the start, could you show us where 709 is? Because we do.
709.
Yep. I think it's where your arrow is.
Right there.
Yep.
That would be this one in the middle. So the focus that we're going to have right now is pretty much on Ace Hardware, which would be on this side of the screen, the right side of the screen. However, this is part of the larger development that we're doing here, where we have office buildings, daycare, retail, and then Ace Hardware here to the right. I will go now to page 9. Let's see. So here I have plan blow up of Ace Hardware. We are proposing to have a right in, right out entrance. I got a comment today, an email today saying that Mass DOT did review it and they are fine with having a right in, right out at that location going out on Plain Street. There were some comments regarding the entrance distance from the edge of pavement over to the entrance of the lot. Those are one of the things that we are addressing. Apart from the other comments that we have, Ace Hardware would occupy approximately 12,500 square feet of the whole building. We are also proposing 4 more retail spaces. The tenant, it's still to be decided. We are also proposing as for a septic system, a denitrification system, being in WRPD. We need to comply with those regulations. Somehow I didn't make this plan, but it will be in the corrected version. We are also proposing to straight up infiltrate the water, the roof water, in terms of water quality volume control. You could see the outline of what would be that underground the Coltech system. It's a galleys. We would just infiltrate everything in there. We have parking spaces. We have the dumpster. The dumpster was moved. It was originally placed here, but now it has been moved in the next mission. Along this edge, we have a swale coming down and a segmental block retaining wall alongside here. That wall is not going to be over 4 feet at its maximum. That's going to swale down to this area down here where it will just go to catch basin down in the lot. And that's pretty much this part of the project. And if you have any questions you would like answered, I would gladly answer them.
Is this an existing site at all? Is there anything on this one?
No, actually, the existing conditions, I'll pull them right up. It's an empty lot. It has been cleared. There were some houses here.
Okay.
They were already removed, so this is an open area. It's an open field pretty much.
So it's that open field right up by the main road.
This area, yes. As of right now, this area is cleared. And this area is pretty much cleared, but it's not very well graded for access. The access would be around this area, right next to the existing pond.
Okay. Okay, Greg, any comments to mention at this time?
A couple of things. Pat is here, so he has a number of comments. But I would just start off with the curb cut is the planning board's jurisdiction under the special permit. The zoning specifically says needs to come in and out of signalized intersections, not directly onto 139. The distance between 139 and that northern driveway, the 90-degree angle for roadway B onto Route 139. And the roadway itself, if you could open up sheet 2 for a minute, go to sheet 2 for a moment. So they're showing an A&R plan, which we will have after this public hearing is over. There is a road network that cuts across lots 3 and 4 and 2 and into 1. Well, actually, it doesn't really touch 1. It's on 2. Is this a roadway or is this a driveway? The problem is you got, especially on lot 3, you see that 150-foot radius, that circle that has to come in and out. 22 feet of lot 3 on the south side is used up. If you go to sheet 4 right now, so you can see that road network and you can see the property line is in red. Most of that road A is on that that parcel, and we got to figure out how we're going to deal with this. We have allowed driveways in the past. In this particular case, because you have 2 office buildings, a daycare center, and a lot of retail going in on a site that was originally programmed as a research and development site, our traffic numbers are going to be higher. I do need a little more time on that traffic because I have to finish going through the current traffic report, pull out all the previous traffic reports, and find the state review numbers as well as the assigned traffic mitigation numbers. And that kind of goes towards that 100,000 square feet of research and development. That was supposed to pay $83,082 towards traffic improvements. This number, even though the square footage is lower, a little lower, the trip generation number is going to be a little higher, which we're going to have pressure on the lights at 139 and Enterprise. That curb cut is something that could relieve some of that pressure, but it could also cause left-hand conflicts. People, because it's just striping, we're going to have people trying to take left-hand turns in and left-hand turns out. So again, on the traffic side, I would like a little more time to finish that review. On Ed Allard's review under the nitrogen loading, the proposal currently exceeds the 5 parts per million. He did state that the septic system does not, on the plan, show that it's a denitrifying. So that was another one of points from Ed. There's some confusion on the parcel side. Some places it says that it's 16.2 acres versus the 11.3. So we got to get that hammered out. It
Yep.
sounds like all the lots along Plain Street are part of this or not. It's hard to tell where that 16 acres come from. The Title V numbers are not broken down by use. And the hardware store has lots of toxic materials, including pesticides, fertilizers, paint, acetone, etc. So those are things that are issues that, as we move forward, the board's going to have to figure out how we're going to deal with. Just trying to flag the major points. Pat had a number of comments as well. Pat, do you have anything you want to add?
Not really at this time. I mean, I did submit the letter to the board dated May 17th with 25 comments. I don't know if it would be beneficial to go through that entire letter at this time. I think I'd suggest that we wait till Grady can address most of these, the majority of these comments, and then we can discuss if there's anything outstanding. But pretty much all of the issues that Greg raised and Ed Eichner raised, I echoed each of those. So I think there's some work to be done on this, and I think it would be more time, more beneficial for time to go over any outstanding issues after they have the first crack at revising the plans.
Okay, that's a good idea.
One other question on that drainage lot that shows on the current sheet that you're showing us to the left over by Enterprise Drive, that's shown in white. Is that an easement to the state or to the town?
That's something
That's for 139, right?
Yes, that was part of 139 of the project on 139. Yes.
Okay. So
Okay.
is that part of the 11 or whatever acres, or is that, because it's not shown in green, that's why I was asking.
I don't think it's in the, I will have to check up on that. Yeah, I'll check up on that.
And the only other thing that I could think of towards that discrepancy is the bank, which was proposed over where the north arrow is, originally was part of this bigger parcel. And I know that got separated off when the road came in, but at one point, Billy Last Jr. had mentioned he was still considering part of this bigger parcel. You guys then bought the 3 smaller lots in the front and stuff. So some things have changed, and that's why it's a little confusing on what the total acreage is.
I'll make sure to clear it up.
Okay.
Greg, may I?
Yep.
So the original lot was 11.1 or 2 acres, and then the new Enterprise Drive entrance came, which cut off that about an acre.
Yep.
And then we bought the 3 houses, which was about an acre. So the current, the current configuration is approximately 11 acres.
Okay. And that includes that drainage thing to the state?
That includes the drainage, the drainage from 139, that basin down the lower left.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any comments from the board at all at this time?
Oh.
Okay, any comments from the public at all? Greg, are we trying to get this on the 28th as well, or what are we looking at for a continuance?
Mike had asked about the 14th. So it's either the 14th or the 28th. We do have a couple of other items on the 14th already that are large, Michael. So if we do put it on the 14th, it would be later in the evening.
That's fine. We'd rather be on the 14th,
Okay.
if that's
seeing-
possible. Thank you.
We'll put it on for them. Seeing no questions from the public, none from the board at this time. Thank you, Gabriel, for the presentation.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to make a motion that we continue the public hearing to June 28th, June 14th, 21 at 7, well, everything's on at 7:05, but you're number 3 on that list. So it'll be a little bit later. Is there a second?
Second, Katie O'Donnell. Aye, Katie O'Donnell.
Nick,
Nick Papastratus, aye.
Fred,
Monaco, aye.
Kevin,
Kevin Cantwell, aye.
Peg Davis, aye.
and Mike Viviano, aye. That's continued to the 14th. All right, at this time, I'm going to open up the A&R plan for Ace Hardware. Is there a second?
Second, Katie O'Donnell. Aye, Katie O'Donnell.
Nick,
Nick Papastratus, aye.
Fred,
Fred Monaco, aye.
Kevin,
Kevin Cantwell, aye.
Peg,
Peg Davis, aye.
and Mike Viviano, aye.
Gabriel, do you want to pull up sheet 2? I believe that's the A&R plan. Oh, he muted himself.
Right here.
We looking to vote in the A&R before everything else gets worked out?
Hmm.
I did have a concern about that, but
Yeah, I think that needs to be discussed first.
Gabriel, what are your thoughts on that? Are we going to go through all this A&R without having the other part of it taken care of?
I mean, wouldn't the A&R be kind of independent?
You know,
This sounds-
absolutely independent, yeah, but it's a lot easier, I believe, than the whole other project together.
Right.
so the concern is the PMUD needs 7 acres minimum. I know the desire on the A&R was to get the lot 1 separated for the hardware store.
Mhm.
But in doing that, you're potentially not in compliance with the special permit anymore if lot 1 is to be sold off immediately.
So we would have to go try to get a vote now, if we could.
Did you say try to vote on it now?
I mean, that is that the suggestion? I'm.
Mhm.
so I
Well,
wasn't clear on that.
I'm just wondering if the project changes and we vote this A&R in now, maybe it doesn't work that way.
Mhm.
And if the other project does get approved, you come back in for the A&R and it'd be a little bit cleaner, I think. Am I right, Greg, on that?
It would be cleaner. If you were to force the vote and the board voted against it tonight, you have a time frame under the state that, or the board took no action, you could then go to the town clerk and ask it to be signed. I was not particularly going to ask the planning board not to vote or vote against it. I just wanted to put it out there as far as the property owner and the proponents that a sale of the property immediately may hurt you in the future if something goes wrong with the PMUD.
Could I refer the question to the client, Mr. Verocchi?
Sure, I think it makes sense to postpone it. Respectfully ask it could be postponed to the 14th.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I agree.
So Mike, I'll need an email saying that it's okay to put this on to the 14th of June so I can give it to the town clerk, because we have that 21-day clock.
Right, okay. I'll send you an email tomorrow, is that okay?
That's fine, thank you.
Great.
Okay, so with that being said, I'm going to make a motion that we continue this hearing until 6/14/21. And this is for the A&R for Ace Hardware. Is there a second?
Second, Katie O'Donnell. Aye, Katie O'Donnell.
Nick,
Nick Papastratus, aye.
Fred,
Fred Monaco, aye.
Kevin,
Kevin Cantwell, aye.
Peg,
Peg Davis, aye.
and Mike Viviano, aye. So we're going to continue that one as well.
Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Greg, I guess I open this one up to you for the discussion of the draft revisions.
Actually, I get to hand this one off to Karen.
Oh, okay, Karen.
Well, as when you know that the zoning was changed, I guess a couple of years ago, but the regulations were a little lagging behind. So the parcel size was still the larger size, so we've changed it down to a 7-acre parcel size and combined. Before there was 2 phases of the PMUD, and so we've consolidated those and taken out the redundancy. And we've also changed the numbering, because if you remember last time when we discussed potential zoning changes for the fall, we were going to move the PMUD section within the regs. So any comments or thoughts when you read through them would be most helpful. I don't know, Greg, was there other part to add?
No, but we would require a public hearing in order to change our rules and regs. After the public hearing, the board gets to vote, and then we file it with the town clerk, who then files it with the E-code people. My thought was we could either do this first or hold off, and when we do our zoning change for the fall town meeting, which is going to be probably around the August timeframe, we put it into that public hearing to save money on the public hearing costs. But the first question was, are you guys okay with the changes that Karen has come up with to basically correct or make the rules and regs match our current zoning? And then the timing is just a matter of budget-wise, it would be probably better for us to hold off and just put it into the same public hearings that we have to do for the zoning changes, and we would just add it to that night.
Yeah, I agree. That's fine to hold off, I believe. Anyone on the board have any questions or comments?
It makes sense to me as well.
Katie, you had your hand up.
I agree.
I did.
You did.
I thought you had your hand up for a moment when I first started talking.
Oh no, I said saving money.
Oh,
Very
okay.
good.
I didn't know that was the saving money symbol.
So I was okay.
All right, so that's good. We'll move forward. We just have to remember that we're going to put it in with the fall zoning changes then. I am going to try to schedule a public hearing in probably now is going to be July 12th, or public meeting, sorry, to allow the public the opportunity before we get into a public hearing and submit things to the selectmen and everything. Here's the zoning changes that we've been talking for a while on Commerce Way, the downtown, and Brant Rock Village. Give them the opportunity to give us, hey, what about changing it this way, or what about doing that instead? Based on that meeting, then we would go into our public hearing and stuff. I just felt, I have been in contact with some of the people that live near Commerce Way, but we haven't really gotten much in the way of feedback yet from the public on the B1 changes to allow mixed use development, and on the going to the third floor, third floor in the Brant Rock. So that's my thoughts for the upcoming, couple of months on changes.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, discussion of remote in-person meetings.
So the selectmen have asked each of the boards to have a discussion about, do you want to continue remote? Are you going to go back to in-person? The one thing that I'll mention is at the moment, we don't have our meeting room anymore. We have a smaller meeting room. Until there are changes in the upstairs town hall, which includes several meeting rooms and possible relocation of some of the offices here, we will be tight on space. So we would probably have to, I'd have to request the library if we were going to start doing in-person meetings. My thought is maybe we continue for the next couple of months on the Zoom meetings and then go to a hybrid and slowly go to an in-person, probably in fall or whatever, to make sure things are going well.
Yeah,
I'm fine with that.
I
don't-
concur with that. I think it's a lot simpler to continue until we have a suitable meeting space and a little more room.
So Greg, what is the DPW area, old area becoming meeting areas? Yeah.
Meeting and office space, yep.
Oh, good. Okay.
So
Any other
Greg,
comment?
how would that, yeah, sorry. How would that work then for the public or applicants when we do go back to in-person? Is it entirely in-person like we used to do, or is there some Zoom component?
If we could still do the Zoom component, I like that ability for both board members and the public and the applicants. I have a feeling that our state legislators are working to modify the executive order that allowed the Zoom to begin with. And I think the one thing that's hard on the Zoom is if I have, say, 3 board members and 5 members of the public all in the same room, it's a little difficult because if we each have our own devices, you're getting feedback and stuff like that. So that part of it, technically, I don't think has been figured out yet. And that's going to be the thing on the hybrid model that we would have to figure out, all right, how do we make this work?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's kind of where I was coming from, is if we go to in-person, we may be excluding some people if we drop the Zoom component. So,
yep.
I like the hybrid
Okay.
using both, Greg, I think, a little bit like what Nick was saying,
I mean, we had kind of started with the hybrid when it was going to be like Michael and I, and then if somebody from the public was going to be there or something, and then the rest of you guys just Zoom in and stuff. I mean, and that's where we could start moving towards. But I think for at least for the next 2 months at least, we should just keep it Zoom and see how things work out.
we got time to think about how it goes and everything.
I agree.
Yeah, I sent a letter to
I agree. Do you need a motion on that?
Well, Katie had something.
I sent a letter to Mike Maresco earlier this evening, just, I knew that the selectmen were discussing it. And I think that there's a lot of pros in the column of Zoom meetings. And I think that keeping them to Zoom meetings right now is probably the most equitable way for people to participate. But I also think even longer term, looking at this, as we all know, as volunteers, I don't count our little elected board member amount as being paid, but there's a lot of people who have a hard time committing to these volunteer hours, right? And if it means having to rush home from work, excluded a lot of people in the past and boards and committees. And if Zoom helps people to participate so that they don't have to find a babysitter on a weeknight, or, find a ride or access, then I think that this is really helpful. And for us, I love having the applicants screen share and being able to look at the plans and knowing that we're all looking at the same plan at the same time. I think it makes a lot of sense for us.
Yeah.
I think it helps keep our applicants keep their costs down, because I don't know how many meetings I've sat through in my life where you watch somebody's lawyer sit there for like 3 hours. You're like, oh my gosh, how much are they paying? Or all of the poor butters who have to come out over and over and over again for the same hearing. Like, we've had people who've spent like years of their lives in meeting rooms just waiting for their agenda item to come up. And so if it helps everybody stay like a little bit calmer and happier to do that on their couch, I'm all for it. So
Yeah, I agree. I just have one question.
Mhm.
Do you have stock in Zoom?
I should have stock in lights, huh? I'm getting really dark in here.
All right. So, yeah, I agree. I think that's good. Hopefully they can come up with some technology where we can have hybrids if necessary, and, waiting until maybe after the summer to try that out. Maybe it'll all be worked out by then.
Sure.
Anyone else? If not, I'm going to make a motion. We approve the meeting minutes of May 10th, 2021.
Second, Katie O'Donnell, I, Katie O'Donnell.
Nick,
Nick Papastratus, aye.
Fred,
Fred Monaco, aye.
Kevin,
Kevin Cantwell, aye.
Peg,
Peg Davis, aye.
and Mike Viviano, aye. Do you have any anything else, Greg?
Two things. Wednesday night, in case somebody's bored at 6 o'clock at night, we do have a rapid recovery plan Brant Rock public meeting. Starts at 6. Hopefully we'll be over by about 7:15 or so. It was a state grant that we've gotten, and there are consultants that are looking at the Brant Rock area and coming up with some recommendations. This is basically their overview and their data presentation, not this is what we need to do yet. So this is like phase or the first part, and then they'll follow it up in a couple of months with here's our recommendations. And number two, our chairman did a noble effort to try to resolve our Adelaide issues. Unfortunately, one of the two parties thought about it and have backed down. So we do not have peace in our time.
Still working on it.
Where we kind of stand, Michael had sent an email out and said, Greg Gibbs has about 1.5 feet of space on the outside of the sidewalk to make up any grading differences and stuff. That will be very steep for both the driveway and the shoulder of the sidewalk. But without an agreement, that's legally all Greg Gibbs can do. And hopefully efforts to disconnect and move those telephone poles will continue.
Okay. So we'll continue to work on that. Hopefully we can get some movement on it.
Greg, were we going to do the Adelaide decision tonight?
Oh, Adelaide decision tonight.
It was sent to the board.
I did
but-
send you guys the Adelaide decision. It is ready for a vote if you do want to do that. I didn't put it on the agenda by mistake. But we can do it under board staff report because you guys already voted to approve it.
Yeah, anyone have any issues with doing it right now?
Okay.
Okay. What's the date on it?
Gotta dig it up. Do you have the date on that one, Karen?
I had it just a second ago. It is the date was, the draft date is May 17th. We'd have to update that.
Yep.
So it can be tonight.
Okay, what was that? What was the permit? What's it for?
Filling of land special permit certificate of action.
With the
Okay.
retaining wall?
Okay, yeah. Just wanted to see what it was. So I'm gonna make a motion that we sign? Or just to endorse it?
Yeah.
Okay, I make a motion to endorse the Adelaide plan dated 5/17/21 that we approved at the previous meeting. Is there a second?
I seconded Fred Monaco.
Thank you, Fred. And then Fred, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, Nick,
Nick Papastratus, aye.
Katie,
Katie O'Donnell, I. Sorry, I had a lag.
Kevin.
Kevin Cantwell, aye.
Greg, is Peg on this one?
Peg did not attend the hearing, so
Okay.
Peg doesn't need to vote on
Correct.
that.
All right, so Mike Viviano, aye.
Fred, that was the most unenthusiastic yay I've ever heard. All right, thank you. We'll get that set. If people want to I can still run out to the parking lot if people don't want to come in the building. I understand. Otherwise, I'll see you, Fred, probably tomorrow.
Okay,
Let me know. I'll need at least 4 signatures. It was a special permit.
all right, great. So if you can stop by and see Greg, stop by and see him. Thanks for everybody for coming, and I'm going to make a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second, Katie O'Donnell, aye. Katie O'Donnell.
Nick,
Nick Papastratus, aye.
Fred,
Fred Monaco, aye.
Kevin,
Kevin Cantwell, aye.
Peg,
Peg Davis, aye.
and Mike Viviano, aye. That concludes the meeting tonight. Thank you.
Thank you,
Everybody, have a
Thank
good
you.
night.
Everybody.
Right.
Aye.